In September 1598, a rising playwright with a fiery temper faced an actor on the edge of London in a deadly duel. By the end of the fight, the actor Gabriel Spencer was dead, and the man who killed him, Ben Jonson, would go on to become one of England's most famous writers. This is the story of how Ben Jonson's career nearly ended before it even really began. Hey friend, welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Heather. I have been podcasting on Tudor England since 2009, which makes me the original Tudor history podcaster. I am, as always, delighted that you are here with me today. We are going to talk about this interesting little slice of life tidbit. I love these little just kind of specific events because a lot of times we talk about these big, long narrative arcs and stories following, generations and themes and all of that. And sometimes it's nice to just talk about a specific event and if that had any lasting legacy on history. So let's get into it. To start with, to understand the duel, you have to first picture the London theater world of the late 1590s. This was the age of Shakespeare's Chamberlain's men competing fiercely with Philip Henslow's Admiral's men, the company that employed the star actor Edward Allen. The theaters were magnets for controversy, loved by audiences, hated by moralists, and tightly policed by city officials. Gabriel Spencer was part of Henslow's Admiral's men. He wasn't a household name, but he was an established actor in a major company, performing in the plays that packed London's stages. Spencer also had a reputation. Records show him getting into violent quarrels, including a brawl in Southwark that landed him in trouble with the law. He was not the kind of man to back down from a fight. And then there was Ben Jonson. Today we know him as the author of Volpone, The Alchemist, and other great plays. He was Shakespeare's rival and sometimes friend. But in 1598, Jonson was still finding his footing. He was a bricklayer's stepson who had gone off to fight as a soldier in the Low Countries. That experience gave him military skills, including swordsmanship, but it also hardened him. Back in London, Jonson turned to the theatre. He had begun writing plays, and his every man and his humor would soon be staged by Shakespeare's own company. But Jonson's reputation offstage was as hot-tempered as his ambition on it. He was known for quarrels and quickness to violence, traits that made a clash with someone like Gabriel Spencer almost inevitable. On the 22nd of September, 1598, Jonson and Spencer met in Hoxton Fields just north of the city walls. Hoxton was a notorious place for illicit activities, duels included. Dueling was technically illegal, but in practice it was a fashionable way for men to settle matters of honor, as it would remain that way until, well into the 19th century. We saw that in fictional characters like Poldark and real people like Alexander Hamilton. We don't know exactly what sparked this fight, whether it was personal insult or professional rivalry or simply Jonson's temper colliding with Spencer's. But what we do know is that swords were drawn. The fight was brutal and fast. Jonson's military training gave him the edge, and he killed Gabriel Spencer with a thrust of his blade. Jonson was immediately arrested and charged with murder. Under Elizabethan law, killing a man in a duel was a capital offense. Normally, this would mean a hanging at Tyburn. But Jonson had one trick up his sleeve. He could read, and he invoked what was known as the benefit of clergy. Now, originally, the benefit of clergy was a privilege designed to protect members of the church from harsh secular courts. They would give a churchman a Bible verse to read, and the assumption was that only educated priests, people in the church, monks, could read. And so you could claim benefit of the clergy, and they would give you a verse to read. If you could read it, they would say, okay, your benefit of the clergy. And that's how it evolved. By the 16th century, it had been extended to any literate man. All Jonson had to do was prove his literacy by reading a passage from the Bible. He did, and in doing so, he saved his own life. Instead of execution, Jonson was branded on the thumb with a hot iron, a permanent mark that showed that he had claimed this legal loophole and he could never use it again. It was a brutal warning. One more crime like this and there would be no second chance. While he was imprisoned, Jonson underwent a personal transformation that would follow him for years. He converted to Catholicism. a dangerous choice in Protestant England where Catholics were viewed with deep suspicion, and public life was risky for anyone associated with the old faith. Jonson's conversion set him apart from his contemporaries. It would haunt him through the rest of Elizabeth's reign and into James's reign. Of course, after the Gunpowder Plot, things became even more difficult for Catholics. So in the space of a few months, Jonson went from being a rising playwright to branded a felon, marked as both a killer and a recusant Catholic, so good times all around. Gabriel Spencer's death was a blow to Henslow's Admiral's men. He had been a working actor with steady roles, and his loss left a gap in the company's lineup. For Jonson, though, the duel gave him a reputation that was both dangerous and oddly compelling. He was now known as a man who lived and fought as dramatically as the characters that he put on stage. This reputation would follow him for the rest of his life. Jonson continued to quarrel, to fight, and to clash with authority. Yet he also became one of the most celebrated literary figures of his age, even serving as a poet laureate under James I. The duel was just one chapter in a career full of controversy, but it was the one that almost ended everything before it even began. It's a strange irony that the man who wrote some of the cleverest, sharpest comedies in English literature carried on his body the scar of a killing. He owed his survival not to noble patronage or to mercy, but to the fact that he could read a single verse from the Bible. And Gabriel Spencer's name is remembered today almost entirely because of the man who killed him. And Ben Jonson, marked forever by that duel in Hoxton Fields, went on to fame not in spite of his violent past, but with it always shadowing his story. So there you go, the duel between Ben Jonson and Gabriel Spencer. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give it a thumbs up wherever you're listening, or leave a comment and let me know. It all helps to feed that algorithm and get our content to more people. And I hope I earned your subscription wherever you're listening to this if I don't already have it. All right, thank you so much for listening, my friend. I will be back again very soon with another story of Tudor England. I think next time we'll stick with the theater theme and we'll talk about the time that Shakespeare moved an entire theater across a frozen river to avoid losing his lease. Let's talk about that next time. I'll speak with you soon. Bye-bye.